US President Joe Biden has pardoned his son Hunter, who's been convicted of 2 federal felonies. Hunter Biden was found guilty of making false statements on a gun background check, as well as failing to pay taxes. He could have spent more than 40 years behind bars. The president said his son had been unfairly targeted and that his convictions were a miscarriage of justice. The decision comes just weeks before he's due to leave office. Biden had repeatedly said that Hunter would not be pardoned. Speaking earlier this year, shortly after Hunter Biden's conviction, the US president said he would not challenge the outcome.
With regard to the question regarding the family, I'm extremely proud of my son Hunter. He has overcome an addiction. He's one of the brightest, most decent men I know, and I am satisfied that I'm not going to do anything. I said I abide by the jury decision, and I will do that, and I will not pardon him.
Mike Hanna's in Washington, D.C. with more details.
After years of saying that he wouldn't, President Biden has reversed course and given a full and unconditional pardon to his son Hunter. Hunter Biden was facing sentencing later this month in charges on a gun application in Delaware and tax evasion in California. Now these charges will simply go away. In announcing the pardon, President Biden says that Hunter was signaled out, and I quote, "only because he was my son." He says, "in trying to break Hunter, they've tried to break me, and there's no reason to believe it will stop. Enough is enough," he continues. So President Biden making very clear his belief that there's a massive political aspect to this case. And certainly throughout the years, Hunter Biden has been a target of Republican enemies of Joe Biden, in particular Donald Trump, who's referred to Hunter Biden on many, many occasions. And President Biden also in the statement says, "I believe in the justice system, but raw politics has influenced the process and it has led to a miscarriage of justice." So strong words from the president and explaining why he has done a U-turn and has now given a full and unconditional pardon to his son, likely to be massive reaction, particularly from his Republican opponents. Mike Hanna, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Eric Ham's a political analyst. He's joining us now from Washington, D.C. Good to have you with us on Al Jazeera. It's no surprise that an outgoing president will want to issue some pardons. The problem perhaps with this one is the fact that he absolutely said he was not going to do this.
That's right. But again, now that an election is over and Joe Biden has no more races to run, I think what we're seeing now is a father who is steadfastly looking out for his son and believing that his son got a political raw deal. He believes he's actually righting that wrong.
Critics of Democrats have said that they always try to take the moral high ground, particularly when facing off against Republicans. Does this weaken that position that the Democrats might believe that they hold?
Well, that's an interesting take, and I think we will hear more people suggest that about Joe Biden. But clearly what we have seen, at least from the most recent election, is those norms that Democrats try to remain within simply have not worked for them at the ballot box. As we're seeing now, many voters simply do not care. We have to remember they just recently elected a man who was found guilty on 34 counts of attempting to influence a porn star.
Given what you've just said, and if the norms are now being changed in the United States, are there questions being raised about who else Joe Biden might choose to pardon and if there are risks around that?
I do believe that will be a lingering question that many people will focus on. And I suspect that now there will be more eyes on any pardons that Joe Biden provides as he heads out the door. But also, I think it raises a much larger question of where does the United States stand now as a nation of laws, given the fact that we are seeing Donald Trump, who was convicted of many crimes. And of course, now we see this pardon by Joe Biden of his son. And of course, we see a number of Donald Trump's incoming political appointees who have had their own brush with the law. And I think this is going to, if you talk about the moral high ground, this is something that's going to be very difficult for the U.S. government to use as it tries to hammer other nations in particular like China, Russia, and North Korea.
Yeah, I want to expand on that a little bit because obviously the international implications of this could be significant given the fact that the U.S. has over many years has set itself apart in suggesting that it is working to some sort of rules-based order, for want of a better phrase. How difficult do you think this is going to make it now for the U.S., for successive U.S. governments essentially to try to pressure other governments around the world?
I think it blurs the lines, and I think it makes it difficult for the United States to make those arguments, especially when you have Joe Biden, who has just done this when, as you mentioned, he said that he would not. Now, of course, he has an argument to make, and many will perhaps believe that. But again, I think when you look at successive moves being made by Joe Biden and, of course, Donald Trump, who ran on pardoning January 6th insurrectionists, I think the argument for the United States becomes much, much more harder as the nation moves forward when you look at this, particularly now that the laws seem to only work for or don't work for certain people.
It's really interesting to get your thoughts on this. Eric Ham, we appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.